everybody, and welcome to We Watch Shudder. My name is JD, and with me today is my friend Michelle. Say hello, Michelle.
Hello, Michelle.
That's on cue. Perfect. That's why she's the co-host. She gets it every time. We want to thank you guys for tuning in to the first episode of We Watch Shudder. Real simple concept here. For those of you who aren't familiar, Shudder is a streaming content service. Focuses specifically on horror and messed up kind of content. And I, of course, am a big fan of horror movies. Michelle, a big fan of horror movies. And what we're going to be doing is Shudder, for the last several years, has been a home for original and exclusive content. And they're putting out a really solid release schedule, like basically a new title every week. So that's specifically what we're going to be looking at. We could definitely be looking at, their classic library, and they do have a fantastic classic library. There's a huge selection of movies there. But we're going to focus on those original and exclusive films from Shudder, just to kind of set us apart maybe from what other folks are doing in this horror film podcast space. Is that what they call it these days, a space? Do they still use that word, or am I behind
think
the times?
That's a scientific phrase.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Verified. Yep.
So we'll give you some basic thoughts on the films up front, and then for those of you who haven't had a chance to see the film yet but would just like to get a quick idea of what we thought of it, we will do a completely spoiler-free short thing right at the beginning, and then we'll give you a pause. We'll make it very clear when we're about to die. You can't talk about horror movies in any meaningful way without getting at least a little bit spoilery. So be prepared for that, but we will give you plenty of warning. And look for this to happen every week. Michelle, are you excited?
I am very excited. I would be watching so many horror movies anyway, and now I just get to talk about them, and that's exciting.
Yeah, and that's kind of how this happened. Michelle and I just both been Shudder subscribers for a while, and we kind of have back and forth discussions about the movies pretty frequently. And it was just like, why don't we just get super pretentious and self-important and record these conversations and share them with the world? And so that's what we're doing.
Especially because we disagree so much.
Oh, we do.
Movies that we love, we have very different types of movies that we enjoy.
And we have some overlap, but definitely some separation as well. And of course, we are determined to not discuss our thoughts on any of these movies until we actually sit down to record. So this is part of the excitement, is I have no idea what Michelle thought of today's movie. She has no idea what I thought of it, and we're going to find out. So what do you say, Michelle? You want to just jump right in?
Yeah, definitely. I have notes. I'm ready.
All right. So today's new release from Shudder, it's a Shudder. I don't know exactly what the difference between a Shudder exclusive and a Shudder original is. I'm going to guess.
I do.
Oh, really?
Shudder exclusive is, I believe that it was distributed someplace else, and now it's only available on Shudder. For a time being, whereas a Shudder original is Shudder made this, and it is for their platform.
Yeah, that's kind of, I assumed, it was kind of my assumption, is a Shudder original was some kind of production deal, and an exclusive was just some kind of distribution deal. Seems kind of self-explanatory. So, this one is a Shudder exclusive. It's an Italian film, but for those of you who are worried, don't worry. The entire movie is in English. It was just produced in Italy. This film is called The Bunker Game, and what we're going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and read you the description of this film from the Shudder website, and then we're going to give some of our basic thoughts on it. So, The Bunker Game. During an immersive game underground where the participants play the survivors of an atomic war, the organizer mysteriously disappears. Is he putting the lives of the participants at risk? Or has something terrible happened in the mysterious dark corners of this historic bunker? That was probably a little too high energy for a horror movie plot, but hey, here we are. So, Michelle, why don't you go first? Give us some basic thoughts on the film. What did you think of it overall?
Yes, so my spoiler-free idea. Overall, I thought it started so interesting with such a a fun concept of people LARPing as Nazis underground. And I thought that would be really fun. And you can't go wrong with Nazis in horror movies because it's really easy to see who the bad guys are immediately. Like some guy just says he's a Nazi, and you're like, okay, you don't have to explain that more. You're into
Right.
racism and
Yeah.
you agree with human experimentation. Cool, I get it. I'm on board. And then it just kind of stopped being interesting.
Okay. Interestingly, here's an interesting thing. This is actually going to be one of those places where we kind of overlap because that's about exactly how I felt about it. I thought the further into the movie you get, the more it falls apart. I thought there were some interesting ideas in the film. One thing I do want to say, and we'll talk about more specific things a little later, it's a beautifully shot film. I don't know who the cinematographer was, but it's beautiful to look at. It's a fantastic production. I just wish it had been in service to a better script. And again, there were good ideas at play here, but the further into the film you get, the more the narrative just collapses. So
yeah, I have lots of thoughts for the spoiler section.
So I guess in the spirit of Shudder reviews, I'm gonna say my overall take on the bunker game, 2 skulls out of 5 is where I'm going. 2 skulls out of 5. Where are you gonna put it?
You were way harsher. I'm doing a solid 3 out of 5. It was not a terrible movie. It just wasn't exciting, and I'm not going to fault it for not being the excitement that I wanted it to be.
Okay,
it was just kind of a meh kind of horror movie, and I don't feel like I wasted my time watching it.
Right on, right on. All right, so now for those of you who would like to watch the film before we dissect it even further, this is where you're going to want to stop. Stop listening now, go watch the film, and then come back, listen to the rest of it. For those of you who just want to hear us dissect the heck out of this movie, just keep on listening. So here's the thing. I think the single biggest mistake this movie made is telling us it was a LARP before the movie started. Imagine that first half hour and you don't know these people are all involved in a LARP game. Like, there are little moments along the way. Like, they put that title card up right at the beginning of the movie that gives you the definition of LARP. But then they never mention it again for the first half hour of the film. There are a few little hints now and then, like somebody says something about playing their roles and something about a game. But if they had just not told you, that whole first hour would have been super, so much better. And so that part of it frustrated the hell out of me. I don't know how you felt about it.
I actually have a very interesting thing that happened on that same note, because I read the title card and I went, oh, interesting. And then I paused the movie for a second. And then when I came back, I completely forgot about that title card.
Nice.
And I watched the movie and I forgot it was LARPing.
Right? And that first half hour I thought was actually super interesting. Here's a question.
Yes.
This is one, though, that I need to get off my chest right away. As you mentioned, it's an alternate history LARP, right? The idea is that Germany won World War II, and then there was like this nuclear war between Germany and the United States and other people, and now there's this bunker where all these Nazis are surviving locked up in this bunker. And here's the thing. Okay, LARPing, I'm cool with that. I'm not a judgmental guy. I'm all about LARPing and nerd culture.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, LARPing's great. A LARP where it's an alternate history where the Nazis won World War II? Great. Love that concept. Fantastic. A LARP where you want to be the Nazis in that situation? What?
Okay, hang on. So here's the thing. These are people who are choosing to be Nazis.
Right.
And then at one point, one of them befriends a ghost who was killed by Nazis.
Right. And
you're supposed to believe that the ghost is on her side.
Right.
And protecting her from fellow Nazis.
I have a note here that says, am I supposed to feel bad for the dead Nazi lady? Like,
exactly.
There's this Nazi because about 2/3 of the way into the film, it suddenly becomes a ghost story. for
It's
no
so
reason at
disappointing.
all.
Yes.
It's just like I actually have a note here that says I'm pretty sure this scene where he talks about about the dark is actually spoiling the entire movie, and then it didn't. I thought for sure that scene was giving away what was about to happen, and it doesn't.
I absolutely did too. Yeah.
Right. The overall idea, though, like the way they presented it, I thought it was, again, super cool. If I had not known implicitly what I was seeing, I would have loved that half. I also mentioned that the cinematography in this movie is fantastic. So as long as we kind of gave us some grief for LARPing Nazis, okay, whatever. Also, surprise before I skip too far away from this. A Nazi LARP attracted real Nazis? Shocker. Who's surprised?
I was not surprised. What I was surprised about was that it took us 2/3 of the movie before people started dying, and they said it was paranormal, but then it wasn't really paranormal. The non-binary Nazi died by glass.
Right.
And then the guy in the wheelchair, which, yay for including a guy in a wheelchair and it not being part of the storyline, and it's just who he is, but then his wheelchair and his legs catch on fire. Right. And he doesn't try to escape the wheelchair to like stop, drop, and roll because he's not buckled in. I watched that scene twice.
Oh, yeah.
Like he could have. Wheelchair people are not just like wheelchair bound. And I was like, maybe I am explaining wheelchairs to a guy in a wheelchair and being an asshole. No, he can walk. He's not in a wheelchair in real world.
Also, I don't believe the phrase wheelchair people is a one that we necessarily want to come back to, but I understand what you mean. But no, you're
people
right.
In wheelchairs.
I think the implication was supposed to be that the ghosts were doing this, but there was no clear evidence whatsoever. There's weird
his wheelchair
stuff just happening.
Malfunctioned and caught on fire. And then the third death of the movie is the lead woman's cousin who is maybe in love with her, but maybe not. They don't explain it fully.
Yeah.
But he just pushes a woman down and you hear her scream and thud and then never hear from her again. So apparently that's how she died. Not a ghost.
He just suddenly becomes a villain out of nowhere.
Yep.
I do have a note here right in front of me that says, and pardon my language here, but it's a horror podcast, deal with it. My note literally says, this dude Harry is annoying as fuck. Because he was so, he's not as, like, he's a jerk to Laura, his cousin. It's, I don't know, man. It was, like I said, as you move into the story, it just gets weirder and dumber. There's a great moment. Also, I have a tendency these days, because I'm getting old, and because they mix the audio in movies so ridiculously, that I keep the subtitles on because the louds are anyway, there's a moment in this where there's some music that they're hearing, but there's a line in the movie where one of the performers says, it doesn't sound like it's coming through the speakers. And then the subtitles literally say, woman singing on speaker.
Oh my gosh.
Like, come on, man.
I made a note right when they were discovering that they were locked in the bunker.
Right.
That first off, these people are cosplaying as Nazis essentially, and they're very soft, fearful people.
Oh, yeah.
For people who are pretending to be Nazis, where they're immediately afraid.
Right. They're not like the Nazi soldiers. They're like the German like aristocrat class who backed the Nazis.
And that's what they chose to pretend to be for the evening.
Yeah, that's their weekend, is we're gonna go pretend to be Nazi aristocracy. It's so strange.
And then all this stuff is happening, everybody's getting scared, and then they start talking about fear can actually kill you. It can kill you. It really can. And what happens during the movie? Nobody dies from becoming too afraid.
No, not once.
They set up so many good ideas.
Oh, yeah.
And then they suddenly just went, meh, ghosts now.
Yeah, it's just a ghost story. Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, as I was going to say, we did mention the movie is beautiful. Like, it's incredibly well shot. There's a few specific things I do want to mention. Even just the first one that really caught my eye is when they're moving from the LARP portion of the film into the second half of the movie. And the blonde lady, Laura, Like there's a slow motion shot and she pulls her blonde wig off to reveal this like bright red hair, and like dyed red, like anime red, not like natural, ginger red. And just the way that shot plays is perfect. My favorite shot, there's two of them in the entire film, but my two very favorites. The one where they're looking at the model of the bunker and they zoom into that hole in one of the tubes, and then it just transitions into them actually in the real space, like the model becomes the real space. Yep. I loved that. And then also there's a shot inside a can of beans that's riddled with maggots. And it's such a great close up, and then the way that alternates with then a hallway shot. It's beautifully photographed. I gotta go back and find out who it was that shot this and find out what else they've done. And then I also have to tweet them or something and just be like, dude, I mean, you're fantastic, but you definitely need to find better scripts to work with because, oh my God.
Yeah, because I think it's kind of telling that this movie started out in a way that I was so excited about, and then one of the best shots is a can of beans with worms in it.
Right.
That's one of the memorable moments.
Right. Yeah. It's a complete throwaway moment, but it's beautifully shot.
It doesn't even make sense in the context of the story, but they were listening to this woman saying, let me shoot a can of beans. And they're like, clearly you're what's holding this film together.
Yeah, absolutely. My one big laugh moment, a real genuine laugh in the entire movie, is they're trying to escape from the bunker whose giant steel doors have mysteriously locked themselves. And the one, Harry's banging on the door, and the guy who we ultimately discover is a real Nazi literally says to him, "Fascists built these doors." And I popped so loud. I laughed so hard at that. Fascists built these doors, as if that tells you everything you need to know. And I don't know, maybe it does. Yeah. It's so I got a good laugh out of that.
Yeah, I really, like, this was a weird one to start the podcast experience off with.
Sure.
Because I didn't really feel strongly that it was bad or good. It's somewhere in the middle, but I was very confused. And that's a weird emotion to feel after a horror movie.
Oh no, I lost you.
Where I was just like so confused. Oh no.
Oh, you're back. You're back. Okay, it's okay. Just keep going. Technical difficulties. We're working through it.
Yeah, but I just felt very confused. After it was over. And I like movies where I feel confused at the end, like, wow, that I have to watch it again. Like, that was so interesting. But this, like, I was confused and they did not expect me to be confused.
Right. I think they expected us to be fully on board and along for the ride. And it's not even that I wasn't, I wanted to be on board. I just didn't understand why anything was happening at all.
No.
Also,
no.
One other last thing I want to point out in the grand scheme of things, we find out the reason that Clara the ghost is so angry is because some American troops showed up and shot up this room full of Nazis that she was in, and that's how she died. Like a mirror shattered and a piece of glass stabbed her in the pregnant belly and killed her and her baby. And look, I don't know. I feel like this is the only place where I'm going to be able to get away with getting this thought out of my head is, look, the most unbelievable thing in this movie is there's absolutely no way American troops left that woman alive. No way whatsoever anybody got out of that bunker without bullets in them. That was ridiculous.
I'm really glad that in our first episode, you have said that American soldiers would never leave somebody alive, and I've used the phrase wheelchair people.
Oh yeah,
to really start off strong.
Well, to be fair, I said American soldiers would never leave Nazis alive.
You said that woman, which would also maybe
she was a Nazi.
She was a Nazi. And so you can't feel bad. That's why it's like, am I supposed to feel sympathy for these Nazis?
There's a moment towards the end where Laura says, "Clara, I think Clara wants to help me," and I just wrote, "Oh, fuck you." It's like, give me a break. Oh man. So so that was the bunker game.
It was a movie.
Right.
It's absolutely a movie.
I think it's one that, like, if you if you're a serious fan of horror films and you like beautifully photographed movies, you should at least give it a look. And again, I still think even with knowing that it was a LARP, I think there's a lot going on in that first half hour of the film that I found really interesting. And I would have liked to have seen that idea explored more. So it's definitely, it's not one that you should go out of your way to avoid, but not one that I think you should, rush right to the service and stream immediately today. You can put it in your list and get to it when you got some time.
Yeah, it starts out wonderful for an hour, and then it just stops and becomes something else. And I had to go look it up because I was like, what did I just watch? And it says it was written by two different pairs of people. And I wonder if they had very different ideas.
Right. Well, that would make sense because it feels like two different movies cobbled together.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm sure the person who wrote the second half, they read through the first half. They had already written their second half, and they went, "What? You haven't killed anybody off? I have to get rid of these people in 5 minutes really quickly because everybody dies an hour in except for two people."
Yeah. It's a total, like, it's completely messy. It has no consistency of tone. The narrative just falls apart.
Yeah.
So.
But I did not feel like I wasted my time. So 3 out of 5 skulls.
No, not at all. So Michelle, 3 out of 5 skulls. I give 2 out of 5 skulls. That's an average 2.5 out of 5 skulls. That's a 50% film.
Which makes sense because I feel like I got 50% of a film.
I think that's perfect. Awesome. So this is what we're going to do, guys, on We Watch Shudder. Every week we're going to take a look at the new original or exclusive release and give you our thoughts on it. We really appreciate you checking it out. We hope you tell your friends all about it. And especially your horror movie friends. I mean, you can tell your non-horror movie friends. I don't know what their interest level is going to be. Maybe they'll think we're clever and interesting people.
We'll see.
We'll see. So, again, thank you so much for checking out the first episode of the show. I would be remiss if I didn't also encourage you to check out my other podcast called All Screens Great and Small, where my friend Scott Ecker and I talk about a wider variety of films, not strictly horror movies. We talk about all sorts of stuff. We just started that about 6 weeks ago. We got a new one coming out this Tuesday where we're going to talk about a few films, including, for you horror fans, we're going to talk about that new Ty West film, X. It's not a Shudder release, though, so it doesn't make its way here. You'll have to check it out on All Screens.
It's got to be separate.
Michelle, you got any last words you want to share with people?
I'm excited. I'm sorry that I used the phrase wheelchair people. I'm sorry that JD claimed that Americans would kill everyone given the chance. I'm sorry for everything I will say on future episodes because it is a horror podcast and it's going to be really hard to be use correct terminology.
Oh yeah.
Like we are making the argument for or against Nazis in our very first episode.
They were LARPing as Nazis.
That's worse. At least the Nazis were in that circumstance. These people knew what Nazis were and went, yeah, it sounds like a good way to spend a Saturday. Yeah,
exactly. All right. All right, guys. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you again next week. Until then, I don't know. I'll think of a catchphrase for next time.
Shudder on.
Yeah.